You ever wake up one morning and feel like you're living someone else's life? You go through your routine, the same coffee, the same route to work, the same conversations, and somewhere deep inside you there's this voice screaming that this isn't really you, that you're performing a role you never auditioned for. You look around and everyone seems fine, everyone seems to have figured out how to be themselves, and you're there wondering, when did I lose myself? When did I become this person I don't even recognize? You try to change. You really do. You read the books, you make the lists, you set the intentions, but a week later you're right back in the same pattern, saying the same things, making the same choices, and the frustration builds because you can't understand why you keep betraying yourself. If you're tired of feeling like a stranger in your own skin, if you're exhausted from pretending you're okay when you're not, then what I'm going to share with you today might be the most important thing you hear this year, because it's not another strategy, it's not another technique, it's a complete shift in how you see yourself and the prison you've been living in. There is a peculiar kind of suffering that modern people endure, a suffering so normalized that we barely have words for it anymore. It is the suffering of the person who wakes up every day and puts on a mask, not because they want to deceive others, but because they have forgotten there was ever a face underneath. We move through our days performing roles we never consciously chose, speaking lines written by voices we cannot identify, pursuing goals that feel hollow the moment we achieve them. And the strangest part, the part that makes this suffering so insidious, is that we believe this. Performance is who we are. We have become so identified with the role that we cannot imagine an existence outside of it. This is not laziness. This is not weakness. This is not a personal failing that sets you apart from everyone else. What you are experiencing is the result of something much larger, something that the French philosopher Michel Foucault spent his entire career trying to illuminate. You are experiencing what happens when a human being becomes the object of their own surveillance, their own discipline, their own judgment. From the moment you were born, you were taught how to be a person. Not just any person, but a very specific kind of person that your family, your culture, your society needed you to be. You learned what was acceptable and what was shameful. You learned which desires were normal and which were deviant. You learned how to sit, how to speak, how to present yourself, how to desire, how to love, how to dream. And all of this learning happened so early, so thoroughly, so completely, that you never questioned whether these rules were true or whether they were just rules. Foucault called this process subjectivation. The way we become subjects, the way we are shaped into particular kinds of selves. But here is what makes this so painful and so difficult to escape. The genius of modern power is that it does not need to force you anymore. It does not need chains or guards or explicit threats. Instead, it has taught you to guard yourself. You have internalized the watchful eye. You have become your own prison guard, monitoring your thoughts, policing your desires, punishing yourself for any deviation from the norm. You do not need someone standing over you telling you how to be, because you have learned to stand over yourself. And this is why change feels so impossible. Because every time you try to break free, there you are, stopping yourself, judging yourself, telling yourself all the reasons why you cannot, should not, must not be different than you are. The real tragedy is not that you are imprisoned. The real tragedy is that you have forgotten you are the one holding the key. You have spent so long identifying with the guard that you have forgotten you are also the prisoner. And the moment, the precise moment when this realization hits you, when you understand that the voice criticizing you is not some objective truth but just another learned pattern, just another rule you internalized so deeply, you mistook it for your own voice, that is the moment everything can begin to shift. Foucault understood something that most therapeutic approaches miss entirely. He understood that you cannot free yourself from your conditioning by simply replacing one set of rules with another. You cannot become free by learning new techniques of self-discipline, by downloading new programming, by adopting new identities, because all of that is still operating within the same logic of control. It is still you trying to shape yourself into something, still you monitoring and measuring and managing yourself. Real freedom, the kind of freedom that actually transforms how you live, does not come from better control. It comes from a fundamentally different relationship with yourself. Imagine for a moment that you have spent your entire life living in a house where every room is covered in mirrors. Everywhere you look, you see yourself reflected back, but not just once. These mirrors distort, they fragment, they multiply. One mirror shows you as your parents see you, another shows you as your boss sees you, another shows you as society says you should be. And you have been trying so hard to align all these reflections, to make yourself into someone who looks right in every mirror, that you have lost all sense of what you might be without the mirrors. What Foucault is asking you to consider is this. What if you stopped trying to perfect your reflection and instead questioned the mirrors themselves? What if you began to ask, not how can I be a better version of what I am supposed to be, but who told me I was supposed to be this in the first place? This is not a comfortable question. It is, in fact, one of the most uncomfortable questions you can ask because it destabilizes everything. When you begin to see that your identity is not a natural fact but a construction, when you begin to understand that the person you think you are is the product of countless influences, pressures, discourses and power relations, it can feel like the ground is disappearing beneath your feet. Who are you if not the roles you play? Who are you if not the thoughts you think? Who are you if not the identity you have spent decades building and defending? The answer, and this is both terrifying and liberating, is that you are not a fixed thing at all. You are a possibility. You are a process. You are a site of ongoing transformation. Foucault studied ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, particularly their practices of self-care, what they called epimeleia heotou, and he discovered something fascinating. These ancient people did not think about the self the way we do. They did not see identity as something you discover, as if there is a true, authentic you buried under layers of social conditioning just waiting to be excavated. Instead, they saw the self as something you create, something you craft, something you practice. They understood that you are not born with a self, you make one. And if you make one, you can make it differently. You can unmake it and remake it. You can engage in what Foucault called practices of freedom, intentional ways of relating to yourself that allow you to become other than what you are. And here, right here, is where everything I have been saying converges into something practical, something you can actually use. Because if you understand that you are not a fixed identity, but a process, if you understand that the voice judging you is not the truth, but a learned pattern, if you understand that freedom is not about finding your true self, but about creating a new way of being, then the question shifts entirely. The question is no longer, why can I not change? The question becomes, what kind of person am I practicing being right now, and what kind of person could I practice being instead? Before we go deeper, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with yourself. How long have you been carrying this feeling? This sense that you are living inauthentically, that you are stuck in patterns you did not choose, that you are not really free even though technically nobody is stopping you. 1 year, 5 years, your whole life, because I know that when you are going through something like this, you feel completely alone. You look around and everyone else seems to have it figured out, everyone else seems comfortable in their own skin, and you think, what is wrong with me? Why am I the only one struggling with this? But the truth is, you are not alone. There are thousands of people watching this video right now who feel exactly the same way. And you know what helps more than any theory or explanation? Knowing that other people understand, that other people are going through it too. So go down to the comments and just write this. Write, I am going through this right now. You do not need to explain anything if you do not want to. Just that sentence is enough. Because when you write that, you are not just venting. You are telling another person who will read your comment, you are not alone either. And that might be exactly what someone needed to hear today. There was a man, let's call him David, who came to understand this in a way that changed his entire existence. David was 42 years old, successful by every conventional measure. Good job, nice house, family, all the markers of a life well lived. But inside, he was dying. Every morning he woke up with a sense of dread, a feeling that he was living someone else's script. He had spent 2 decades building a career he did not care about, maintaining relationships that felt performative, pursuing achievements that meant nothing to him. And the worst part was that he could not explain to anyone why he was unhappy, because from the outside, everything looked perfect. David tried everything: therapy, meditation, self-help books, changing jobs, changing cities, even changing partners. Nothing worked because he was still operating under the same fundamental assumption that there was something wrong with him that needed to be fixed, that he needed to find his true self, that he needed to become the person he was meant to be. It was only when he encountered Foucault's work, quite by accident, that something clicked. He realized he had been asking the wrong question his entire life. He had been asking, how do I become who I really am, when the real question was, who taught me that I need to be anyone in particular? David began to practice what Foucault might call critical self-examination, not to discover some hidden truth about himself, but to see how he had been constructed, shaped, disciplined into being the person he was. He looked at his beliefs about success and traced them back to his father's disappointment and his culture's obsession with achievement. He looked at his relationship patterns and saw his mother's anxiety and society's scripts about masculinity. He looked at his self-criticism and recognized the voice of every teacher, every coach, every authority figure who had told him he was not enough. And as he did this, as he dismantled the architecture of his identity, something extraordinary happened. He did not find his true self underneath. He found space. He found possibility. He found freedom. This is the shift that changes everything. When you stop trying to discover who you really are and start examining how you became who you are. When you stop trying to be authentic and start questioning what authenticity even means. When you stop trying to control yourself and start observing the mechanisms of that control, you begin to loosen the grip of all the forces that have shaped you. You begin to see that the thoughts in your head are not necessarily your thoughts. The desires you have are not necessarily your desires. The goals you pursue are not necessarily your goals. And this seeing, this awareness, this is the beginning of freedom. But freedom is not easy. Freedom is not comfortable. Freedom does not come with instructions or guarantees. Because when you stop being the person you were taught to be, when you step outside the roles and rules and expectations that have governed your entire life, you enter what Foucault called a space of undefined potential. You do not know who you will become. You do not know what you will want. You do not know what your life will look like. And this uncertainty, this not knowing, this is what most people find unbearable. This is why most people, even when they see the prison, even when they understand they are trapped, choose to stay inside. Because at least inside there are walls. At least inside there is definition. At least inside you know who you are, even if who you are makes you miserable. The practices of freedom that Foucault points us toward are not about replacing old rules with new rules. They are about developing a different relationship with rules altogether. They are about cultivating the capacity to examine your own assumptions, to question your own beliefs, to create distance between yourself and the identities you have worn. This might look like noticing when you are performing for an invisible audience and choosing not to. It might look like sitting with discomfort instead of immediately trying to fix or change or manage it. It might look like experimenting with different ways of being, trying on perspectives and behaviors that feel foreign, not to find the right one, but to expand your sense of what is possible. It might look like speaking honestly, even when honesty feels dangerous, practicing what the Greeks called parrhesia, the courage to speak the truth about yourself to yourself and others. These are not techniques you do once and then you are free. These are, you are free, ongoing practices. Because the forces that shape you, the discourses that discipline you, the power relations that constitute you, these do not disappear just because you become aware of them. They are always there, always operating, always trying to pull you back into familiar patterns. Freedom is not a destination you reach. Freedom is a practice you engage in again and again every single day. If you have made it this far in this video, I know you are not just looking for information, you are looking for transformation. You are looking for a different way to exist in the world, and I want to tell you something. You do not have to go through this alone. This channel exists for people like you, people who are tired of superficial answers, who want to go deeper, who have the courage to question everything they learned about themselves. Every week I bring reflections like this, exploring the deepest corners of human experience through philosophy and spirituality. If you want to continue this journey of self-understanding, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Not because I need numbers, but because you deserve a space where you can think differently, feel differently, be differently. And if this video touched something true inside you, leave a like so more people who need to hear this can find this content. You are not alone in this search. The strange thing about this moment, the moment when you begin to understand that you are not who you thought you were, is that it feels like both an ending and a beginning. The person you have been, the identity you have carried, the self you have defended and protected and tried so hard to perfect, that person begins to dissolve. And in the space where that person used to be, there is nothing. Just openness. Just potential. Just the raw material of a life that has not yet been determined. This emptiness terrifies most people. They scramble to fill it with a new identity, a new role, a new set of rules to follow. But if you can sit in that emptiness, if you can tolerate the discomfort of not knowing who you are, if you can resist the urge to immediately become something else, then something miraculous becomes possible. You discover that you do not need to be anyone in particular. You discover that the pressure to become, to achieve, to perfect yourself, all of that pressure was just another form of control. You discover that freedom is not about finally becoming who you really are. Freedom is about releasing the need to be anyone at all. This does not mean you become passive or aimless or nihilistic. It means you stop living from a place of lack. Stop trying to fill a hole that was never really there. Stop chasing an image of perfection that was imposed on you from the outside. Instead, you begin to live from a place of creative possibility. You make choices not because you should, or because they will make you into someone admirable, but because they genuinely express what you care about in this moment. You engage with the world not as a project to be completed, but as an ongoing experiment, a practice, a dance. You become the artist of your own existence, not because you have finally found your authentic voice, but because you have realized there was never a voice to find, only one to create. And here is what nobody tells you about this journey. It is not a straight line, it is not a steady progression from imprisoned to free. You will have days when you see clearly, when you feel the lightness of not being bound to any fixed identity, when you move through the world with a sense of play and possibility. And you will have other days when you forget everything, when you fall back into old patterns, when you catch yourself performing for invisible judges again, when the weight of who you are supposed to be crushes down on you. This is not failure. This is the practice. This is what it means to be human. The freedom Foucault points us toward is not about transcending your conditioning once and for all. It is about developing the capacity to see it when it arises, to recognize when you are being operated by forces outside your awareness, and to choose in that moment to relate to yourself differently. You only understand this once, not in the sense that you hear it once and then never need to hear it again, but in the sense that there is a moment, a singular moment in your life, when this understanding lands not just intellectually, but in your bones, when you feel in your entire body the truth that you are not the fixed self you thought you were, that you have been living in a cage whose bars are made of nothing but learned beliefs and internalized voices and patterns, so old you mistook them for nature itself. And when that understanding lands, when it really lands, everything changes. Not because you suddenly become a different person, but because you stop needing to be any particular person at all. You realize that the freedom you have been seeking your entire life was never something to be achieved or attained or found. It was always already here, hidden underneath the layers of who you thought you had to be. This is your invitation, not to become someone better, not to find your true self, not to perfect or fix or improve yourself. This is your invitation to step outside the entire game of self-improvement and self-definition and self-management, to see that game for what it is, a system of control that you have been participating in without realizing you had a choice. Your freedom begins the moment you understand that you are not your thoughts, you are not your patterns, you are not your past, you are not even your identity. You are the space in which all of that arises, the awareness that witnesses it all, the possibility that can never be fully captured or defined or controlled. And that possibility, that boundless creative potential that you are. It has been waiting your entire life for you to